All right. Okay, we are live. Thank you so much for tuning in for Charlesette Ministries Read Through the Torah portions this year. We are going to be reading the Parasha 25, which is going to be from Leviticus chapter 6, verse 1 or 8, depending on which numbering, through chapter 8, verse 36. All right, so let's begin. And Adonai said to Moshe, "Give this order unto Aaron and his sons. This is the law for the burnt offering. It is what goes up on its firewood upon the altar all night long, until morning. In this way the fire of the altar will be kept burning. When the fire has consumed the burnt offering on the altar, the Kohen, having put on his linen garment and covered himself with his linen shorts, is to remove the ashes and put them beside the altar. Then he is to remove those garments and put on others, before carrying the ashes outside the camp to a clean place. In this way, the fire on the altar will be kept burning and not be allowed to go out. Each morning, the Kohen is to kindle wood on it, arrange the burnt offering, and make the fat of the peace offerings go up in smoke. Fire is to be kept burning on the altar continually. It is not to go out. This is the law for the grain offering. The sons of Aaron are to offer it before Adonai in front of the altar. He is to take from the grain offering a handful of its fine flour, some of its olive oil, and all of the frankincense which is on the grain offering. And he is to make this reminder portion of it go up in smoke on the altar as a fragrant aroma for Adonai. The rest of it Aaron and his sons are to eat. It is to be eaten without leaven in a holy place. They are to eat it in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. It is not to be baked with leaven. I had given it as their portion of my offerings made by fire, like the sin offering and the guilt offering. It is especially holy. Every male descendant of Aaron may eat from it. It is his share of the offerings for Adonai made by fire forever throughout all your generations. Whatever touches those things will become holy. Adonai said to Moshe, "This is the offering for Adonai, which Aaron and his sons are to offer on the day he is anointed. 2 quarts of fine flour, half of it in the morning and half in the evening, as a grain offering from then on. It is to be well mixed with olive oil and fried on a griddle. Then bring it in, break it in pieces, and offer the grain offering as a fragrant aroma for Adonai. The appointed Kohen, who will take Aaron's place from among his descendants, will offer it. It is a perpetual obligation. It must be entirely made to go up in smoke before Adonai. Every grain offering of the Kohen is to be entirely made to go up in smoke. It is not to be eaten." Adonai said to Moshe, "Tell Aaron and his sons, this is the law for the sin offering. The sin offering is to be slaughtered before Adonai in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. It is especially holy. The Kohen who offers it for sins is to eat it. It is to be eaten in a holy place, in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. Whoever touches its flesh will become holy. If any of its blood splashes on any item of clothing, you are to wash it in a holy place. The clay pot in which it is cooked must be broken. If it is cooked in a bronze pot, it must be scoured and rinsed in water. Any male from the family of the Kohanim may eat the sin offering. It is especially holy. But no sin offering which has had any of its blood brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement in the holy place is to be eaten. It is to be burned up completely. This is the law for the guilt offering. It is especially holy. They are to slaughter the guilt offering in the place where they slaughter the burnt offering, and its blood is to be splashed against all sides of the altar. He is to offer all its fat, the tail fat, the fat covering the inner organs, the 2 kidneys and the fat on them near the flanks, and the covering of the liver, which he will remove with the kidneys. The Kohen will make them go up in smoke on the altar as an offering made by fire to Adonai. It is a guilt offering. Every male from a family of Kohanim may eat it. It is to be eaten in a holy place. It is especially holy. The guilt offering is like to the sin offering. The same law governs them. It will belong to the Kohen who uses it to make atonement. The Kohen who offers someone's burnt offering will possess the hide of the burnt offering which he has offered. Every grain offering baked in the oven, cooked in a pot, or fried on a griddle will belong to the Kohen who offers it. But every grain offering which is mixed with olive oil or is dry will belong to all the sons of Aaron equally. This is the law for sacrificing peace offerings offered to Adonai. If a person offers it for giving thanks, he is to offer it with thanksgiving sacrifice of unleavened cakes mixed with olive oil, matzah spread with olive oil, and cakes made of fine flour mixed with olive oil and fried. With cakes of leavened bread, he is to present his offering together with the sacrifices of his peace offerings for giving thanks. From each kind of offering, he is to present one as a gift for Adonai. It will belong to the Kohen who splashes the blood of the peace offerings against the altar. The meat of the sacrifice of his peace offerings for giving thanks is to be eaten on the day of his offerings. He is not to leave any of it until morning. But if the sacrifice connected with his offering is for a vow or is a voluntary offering, then while it is to be eaten on the day he offers his sacrifice, what remains of it may be eaten the next day. However, what remains of the meat of the sacrifice on the 3rd day is to be burned up completely. If any of the meat of the sacrifice of his peace offerings is eaten the 3rd day, the sacrifice will neither be accepted nor credited to the person offering it. Rather, it will have become a disgusting thing, and whoever eats it will bear the consequences of his wrongdoing. Meat which touches something unclean is not to be eaten, but burned up completely. As for the meat, everyone who is clean may eat it, but a person in a state of uncleanness who eats any meat from the sacrifice of peace offerings made to Adonai will be cut off from his people. Anyone who touches something unclean, whether the uncleanness be from a person or an unclean animal, or from some other unclean detestable thing, then eats the meat from the sacrifice of peace offerings for Adonai, that person will be cut off from his people. Adonai said to Moshe, "Say unto the people of Israel, you are not to eat the fat of bulls, sheep, or goats. The fat of animals that die of themselves are not to be, or are killed by wild animals, may not be used for any other purpose, but may be used for any other purpose, but under no circumstances are you to eat it. For whoever eats the fat of animals, of the kind used in presenting an offering made by fire to Adonai, will be cut off from his people. You are not to eat any kind of blood, whether from birds or animals or in any of your homes. Whoever eats any blood will be cut off from his people." Adonai said to Moshe, "Say unto the people of Israel, a person who offers his sacrifice of peace offerings to Adonai is to bring part of his sacrifice of peace offerings as his offering for Adonai. He is to bring with his own hands the offerings for Adonai made by fire. He is to bring the breast with its fat. The breast is to be waved as a wave offering before Adonai. The Kohen is to make the fat go up in smoke on the altar, but the breast will belong to Aaron and his descendants. You are to give the right thigh from your sacrifice of peace offerings to the Kohen as a contribution. The descendant of Aaron who offers the blood of the peace offerings is to have the right thigh as his share. For the breast that has been waved and the thigh that has been contributed, I have taken from the people of Israel out of their sacrifices of peace offerings and given them to Aaron the Kohen and his descendants as their share forever from the people of Israel. On the day when Aaron and his sons were presented to serve Adonai in the office of Kohen, this portion was set aside for him and his descendants from the offerings for Adonai made by fire. On the day they were anointed, Adonai ordered that this be given to them by the people of Israel. It is their share forever through all their generations. This is the law for the burnt offering, the grain offering, the sin offering, the guilt offering, the consecration offering, and the sacrifice of peace offerings, which Adonai ordered Moshe on Mount Sinai. On the day he ordered the people of Israel to present their offerings to Adonai in the Sinai desert. Adonai said to Moshe, "Take Aaron and his sons with him, the garments, the anointing oil, the bull for the sin offering, 2 rams, and the basket of matzah, and assemble the entire community at the entrance to the tent of meeting." Moshe did as Adonai ordered him, and the community was assembled at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Moshe said to the community, "This is what Adonai has ordered to be done." Moshe brought Aaron and his sons, washed them with water, put the tunic on him, wrapped the sash around him, clothed him with the robe, put the ritual vest on him, wrapped around him the decorated belt, and fastened the vest to him with it. He put the breastplate on him, and into the breastplate he put the Urim and the Thummim. He set the turban on his head, and on the front of the turban he affixed the gold plate, the holy ornament, as Adonai had ordered Moshe. Then Moshe took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and everything in it, thus consecrating them. He sprinkled some on the altar 7 times, anointing the altar with all its utensils and the basin with its base to consecrate them. He poured some of the anointing oil on Aaron's head and anointing him to consecrate him. Moshe brought Aaron's sons, clothed them with tunics, wrapped sashes on them, and put headgear on them, as Adonai had ordered Moshe. Then the young bull for the sin offering was brought, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the bull for the sin offering. After it had been slaughtered, Moshe took the blood and put it on the horns of the altar all the way around with his finger, thus purifying the altar. The remaining blood he poured out at the base of the altar and consecrated it to make atonement for it. Moshe took all the fat on the inner organs, the covering of the liver, the 2 kidneys, and their fat, and made them go up in smoke on the altar. But the bull, its hide, its flesh, and its dung were taken outside the camp and burned up completely, as Adonai had ordered Moshe. Next, the ram for the burnt offering was presented. Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram, and after it had been slaughtered, Moshe splashed the blood on all sides of the altar. When the ram had been cut up in pieces, Moshe made the head, the pieces, and the fat to go up in smoke. When the inner organs and the lower parts of the legs had been washed with water, Moshe made the entire ram to go up in smoke on the altar. It was a burnt offering, giving a fragrant aroma, an offering made by fire to Adonai, as Adonai had ordered Moshe. Then the other ram was presented, the ram of consecration. Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram. After it had been slaughtered, Moshe took of its blood and put it on the tip of Aaron's ear, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Next, Aaron's sons were brought, and Moshe put some of the blood on the tips of their right ear, on the thumbs of their right hand, and on the big toes of their right feet. Then Moshe splashed the bloods on all sides of the altar. He took the fat tail, all the fat covering the inner organs, the covering of the liver, the 2 kidneys with their fat, and the right thigh. From the basket of matzah that was before Adonai, he took 1 piece of matzah, 1 cake of oiled bread, and 1 wafer, and placed them on the fat and on the right thigh. Then he put it all in Aaron's hands, and in the hands of his sons, and waved them as a wave offering before Adonai. Moshe took them out of their hands and made them go up in smoke on the altar on top of the burnt offering. They were a consecration offering, giving a fragrant aroma, an offering made by fire to Adonai. Moshe took the breast and waved it as a wave offering before Adonai. It was Moshe's portion of the ram of consecration, as Adonai had ordered Moshe. Moshe took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood which was on the altar, and sprinkled it on Aaron and his clothing, and on his sons with him and their clothing, and consecrated Aaron and his clothing together with his sons and their clothing. Moshe said to Aaron and his sons, "Boil the meat at the door of the tent of meeting, and eat it there with the bread that is in the basket of consecration, as I ordered when I said that Aaron and his sons are to eat it. Whatever is left over of the meat and bread you are to burn up completely. You are not to go out from the entrance to the tent of meeting for 7 days, until the day of your consecration are over, since Adonai will be consecrating you for 7 days. He ordered done what has been done today, in order to make atonement for you. You are to remain at the entrance to the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days, thereby obeying what Adonai ordered done, so that you may not die. For this is what I was ordered." Aaron and his sons did all the things which Adonai ordered through Moshe. All right, now we're going to switch gears to the Haftarah, which is going to be in Jeremiah 7, chapter 7, verse 21 through 8, chapter 8, verse 3, and then we'll skip forward to chapter 9, verse 22 or 23, through 23 or 24, depending on which version you have. All right. Verse 21. Thus says Adonai Tzavot, the God of Israel, you may as well eat the meat of your burnt offerings along with that of your sacrifices. For I didn't speak to your ancestors or give them orders concerning burnt offerings or sacrifices when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. Rather, what I did order them was this: pay attention to what I say. Then I will be your God, and you will be my people. And everything live according to the way that I ordered you, so that things will go well for you. But they neither listened nor paid attention, but lived according to their own plans, and the stubbornness of their evil hearts, thus going backward and not forward. You have done this from the day your ancestors came out of Egypt until today, even though I sent you all my servants, the prophets, sending them time after time. They would not listen nor pay attention to me, but stiffened their necks. They did worse than their ancestors. So tell them all this, but they won't listen to you. Likewise, call to them, but they won't answer you. Therefore, say to them, this is the nation that has not listened to the voice of Adonai their God. They won't take correction. Faithfulness has perished. It has vanished from their mouths. Cut off your hair and throw it away. Take up a lamentation on the bare hills, for Adonai has rejected and abandoned the generations that rouse his anger. For the people of Yehuda have done what is evil from my perspective, says Adonai. They have set up their detestable things in the house which bears my name to defile it. They have built the high places of Tophet and in the Ben Hinnom Valley to burn their sons and daughters in the fire, something I never ordered. In fact, such a thing never even entered my mind. Therefore, the days are coming, says Adonai, when it will no longer be called either Tophet or the Ben Hinnom Valley, but the Valley of Slaughter. They will put the dead in Tophet, because there will be no space left. The corpses of this people will become food for the birds in the air and the wild animals. No one will frighten them away. Then in the cities of Yehuda and the streets of Jerusalem I will silence the sounds of joy and gladness and the voices of bridegroom and bride, because the land will be reduced to ruins. At that time, says Adonai, they will remove the bones of the kings of Yehuda, the bones of his princes, the bones of the Kohanim, the bones of the prophets, and the bones of the inhabitants of Jerusalem from their graves. They will spread them out, exposed to the sun, the moon, and the entire army of heaven, whom they loved, served, walked after, sought after, and worshipped. The bones will not be collected or reburied, but will be left lying on the ground like dung. All the survivors of this evil family who remain wherever I have driven them will prefer death to life, says Adonai Sevaot. Skipping forward briefly through chapter 9, verse 22 or 23. Here's what Adonai says. The wise man should not boast of his wisdom. The powerful should not boast of his power. The wealthy should not boast of his wealth. Instead, let the boaster boast about this, that he understands and knows me, that I am Adonai, practicing grace, justice, and righteousness in the land. For in these things I take pleasure, says Adonai. All right, thank you so much for joining Charlesette Ministries. Read through the Torah portions. Be sure to check out the devotional that goes along with the chapters, and it will be linked below or on a link on the screen. So you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and Shabbat Shalom.